Hi, guys. Welcome to a little bit of woo woo. This is the tinfoil hat edition of this episode. I wanted to do a couple of predictions or a couple of things I've gotten over the weeks that fall into the category of tinfoil hat. I know in the past I've said not to take what I say too seriously and definitely to consider it for entertainment purposes only. I would say I've said in the past, take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to say take it with the whole shaker right now because I'm about to see some things I've been saving up. And, I'm not, this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not an expert in everything. And sometimes I'm wrong. And I've been very publicly wrong before. So, fiction, I'm just saying, take this with a grain of salt, okay? And the tinfoil hat is to remind you, entertainment purposes only. Okay, so I wanted to start with something it's a little moderate. So, some of y'all, pregnant with a book. But more importantly, some of you are about to be pregnant with a baby. Um, Here's how you can tell. I'm just going to tell you this because I get this call a lot where stuff starts happening in the house. When you're about to have a little baby soul come into your body, they come to your house first and they start looking around. They start doing things. They're excited to join your family. They start messing with the dog. They start scaring the cat. They do very little kid-like things. So what they'll start doing is they'll do things like the ding dong ditch. They'll ring the doorbell and then, there's nothing there. They'll set off the smoke detectors. Those are actually really easy for a soul that's not in a body yet to do. They'll hide things. They'll hide things. And it's okay to say, look, hide my books, but not my keys. It's okay to say that. When that happens, you don't necessarily need to call someone like me, although, I'd be glad to see you for a session. I do psychic readings and hypnotherapy, but it's not necessary because usually it just means there's a soul about to come in. And if you've been trying to create a family, it's gonna and that's happening in your house, it's gonna happen. Now, if you're not wanting that family that wants to show up, I would just say use some extra precautions because you don't want someone to slip one past the goalie if you're not ready for it. I'm just saying, okay? Pregnant with a book looks very different than that. But my guides have been asking me to tell people that have a book idea to start putting action into it, start writing it. Now's the time to start writing it. There's some chaotic energy going on. Astrologically, there's a lot of stuff going on. Now's a really good time to start to pen to paper. I would do some typing, but I would just tell you from experience, I've written 3 books. From experience, back that shit up. I'm just saying. I lost two hard drives. 2 hard drives. In the middle of writing a book. Fortunately, I had a whole backup system in place. I don't really lose anything, but I'm just telling you, that's the kind of stuff that happens when you're starting to write a book. You get, halfway through it and you lose a hard drive, which doesn't usually happen, but it's happened to me twice. Start backing up, create a system and start putting it into place. Start writing it and typing it, getting it moving because now's the time, right? The energy is really good for that right now. Okay. So tinfoil hat time. I was asking about what happened with Harris, and I know there's a lot of speculation out there. I'm not going to get into the weeds with all of this, but one thing I was getting was that the Democrats kind of knew that her chances of winning were pretty slim this time. That their chances of winning were pretty slim without Biden. They had some early poll numbers. They were seeing the writing on the wall, and they didn't want to throw up they wanted to look for the nearest woman to throw under the bus. All the women watching know exactly what I'm talking about. This has happened to lots of cases where a woman's been called in to clean up a mess, then she gets blamed. So they didn't want to throw up like their Gavin Newsom's or some of their other more name recognized candidates. They threw up her, and wow, if she wins, great. But if she doesn't, we didn't lose what they considered their best prospects. I'm not saying that this was right. I'm just saying it feels like that's kind of what happened there. They didn't do a caucus. Normally they would caucus and let the states determine who they want the candidate to be. That's not really what happened. It was sort of just told. Now, I liked her. So before you start writing in the comments that I'm being mean, I'm just saying what I saw, right? And again, tinfoil hat. Okay. The other thing I was seeing is I had asked about, is 45 really serious about this Greenland thing? You guys, when I tuned in, I was getting that he totally was. He is. And the guys were showing it to me in sort of an interesting way. So Russia wants Ukraine, right? China wants Taiwan. To some extent, Israel wants Gaza. I know that's a little bit different situation, so you don't need to say anything on that. But what's 45 going to get? What's left in the world? Greenland. Now I know there's some strategic stuff there. Greenland, Panama Canal, maybe can rename the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know, but that is the thinking that I was getting when I was tuning in. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I also don't think too many Americans would want us to try and take over Canada. Canada, we don't really want to go to war with the whole rest of the world over this. Trust me. And also, no, nobody wants that. I don't see it happening. I'm just saying. Another tinfoil hat thing I'm going to talk about is with the EV cars. Now, I never driven one. I'm just going to tell you this right up front. I did have a hybrid once. The one I had, they don't make anymore. I did not like it. So, I feel like it's good to declare my bias there. I was getting that there's kind of this campaign going against them, that if we were to look at the money, like where the money for these campaigns was coming from, I feel like it has Exxon written all over it. I'm not saying Exxon specifically. I'm saying that a lot of the oil industry doesn't love the idea of these EV cars, even though the electricity usually is coming from fossil fuels. I'm saying entertainment purposes only. I feel like there's a lot of where these campaigns are coming from that if we really knew, if we could follow the money, you'd be really surprised. The other thing I would say too is try not to get too caught up in narratives. Try not to get too caught up in stories. If the news thing that you're watching is only a minute and a half long, you're not getting the whole story. You're not getting the whole picture. I'll give an example. My dad was involved with the fire department before, and he was a fire marshal for a community for a little while. So I do know a little bit about the fire department and what happens when there's a fire. A little bit. I wasn't there, but I was enough to know some of what we were hearing is just total BS. And when half of what I'm hearing is BS, I wonder about the half that I don't know about. I would just suggest that if you're plugging every fire hose in Southern California into all the fire hydrants in a very short space of area, it wouldn't be odd to think that a couple of them might not work. Okay. More to it than that. But yes, I would say instead of getting caught up in these narratives and the finger pointing that they're all doing, including, I'm going to add a little bit to that one a little bit later, but all the finger pointing that they're all doing, I would look at the stories that are beautiful. The stories of people getting reunited with their pets, the stories where municipalities are sending fire trucks from all over the country to put this sucker out. California, Cal Fire trucks were in Oregon when I was there in Southern Oregon and saving our butts when it happened to us. So I know that Oregon's probably doing the same. Just know that that's the story you want to focus on, because that's the one that's beautiful. And that's the one where Americans coming together, because at the end of the day, we all love each other. Nobody wants to see anything bad happen. It's only the politicians that are using this as an opportunity to throw mud at somebody who is very likely going to be a presidential candidate in 4 years. Oh my God, this seems like it's too soon. Anyway, I don't want to do this election thing again. It's only January 13th. I'm like exhausted. I feel like the year has already taken it. I will say one last thing I want to say is I feel like the M&M Award, so you guys know what I'm talking about. The MLM Award, there's two more things. MLM Award needs to go to Gavin Newsom for Finger at 45, because I feel like his saying that the people in affected areas of fire don't have to pay their taxes till October is going to affect the government in some way. Some of you guys don't realize California actually pays in more in taxes than we get back. I'm sorry, I don't live there. In California, California gets back in entitlements, so things like Social Security and Medicare. Where people retire kind of affects that. And California pays in more than it receives, unlike a lot of the other states. So if they decide they're not going to pay their taxes until October, the government's not going to get that money, and I'm sure it would like to have them. I'm sure it would like to have that money. So as far as the fire goes, again, entertainment purposes only. I don't know anything. You guys shouldn't listen to me. Just don't listen to me. I do feel like we've already seen on the news that there's some that there's some speculation that there was arson involved. I think there may even be, are those arson-related events a little part of a bigger plan? Maybe even something that sounds a lot like tourism? Yeah, I feel like there is. But is it coming to a community near you? Not necessarily. The targets here were pretty specifically pretty specifically an industry that largely supports a more Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, let's say, largely. I feel like this was the target. The other question people have asked, and in the tinfoil hat again, with the drones, was this having to do? I was not getting that it had anything to do with the drones, but I was also getting that the drones, to some extent, were really a distraction. Every time I've tuned into this, I've always heard it's just a distraction. Like when there's more news about the drones, we need to focus on what's going on. It's on the back page of the news. That's where you need to look at. And it's important here in this situation to not be a part of these very negative narratives. It is very easy to get caught into it. I like it too, but I think that for the most part, we really need to focus on the positive things. We need to focus on love. We need to focus on how we're connected and not get caught up in it, because if we stop watching some of this, mudslinging and dirt and all of those ugly things, if we stop watching it, we'll actually feel so much better. Go back to what your New Year's resolutions were. Do you even remember them anymore? I kind of don't. Start writing that book, get the nursery ready for the baby that's coming, and hug your dogs and your cats, and just know that everything is going to be okay. We're all in this together. And when you see what people are doing for each other in LA, in North Carolina, all of that, you'll start to realize what we all really represent. And it's not fighting about water rights and some fish, and whether LA gave some used fire equipment to Ukraine, or whether they actually, I thought they mostly gave it to Mexico. When a fire truck goes out of service, you can put it in the comments if you know. I'm pretty sure they usually send those down to Mexico when they can't use them anymore, like they're too old, or they outlive their usefulness, or they get a new one. That's my understanding, but I might be wrong on that one. Anyway, entertainment purposes only. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your support. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. I may not be back for the rest of the week. You can't tell, but I'm fighting something off. I'm not feeling so great. I might just go back to bed. I'll see you guys soon. Love you. Mwah.